Thank you for joining us here at the camp. We're here to talk about the future, and we're going to take a little bit of a history lesson, go back in time a little bit about how we got to here, and then what we're really going to focus on is not trend in the next 12 to 24 months or even 36 months, but really want to talk about what we think outdoor retail is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. When we first put down the panel, we said, okay, well, let's talk about what retail is going to look like in 2020. Well, the reality is most of us are here looking at 2017 lines. 2020 is around the corner. So that's actually in the very near window of the future. Hard to imagine. When we think about what the future is going to look like broad scale, we want to think 5 to 10 years out. So we're going to go through the panel. I'm going to ask some questions. And then what we really want to do is we want to open it up to people in the audience. So what I'd ask is if you guys have questions while we're talking, raise your hand, interrupt us. I'll just need to repeat your question so everyone can hear it. But don't be afraid to ask questions, okay? Like I said, I'm from the Mountain Lab. We work with Outdoor Retailer on the Venture Out space over here. We're a small brand strategy agency in California, mostly rooted in the outdoor industry. To my left is Janine Pesh from Range. If you guys haven't picked up a copy of the magazine, please do so, and I'll let her give a little bit of a bio on herself if we get there. Darren Bush has been in retail for 27 years. And is the owner of Rutabaga and puts on Canoecopia from a very traditional outdoor retail and then a disruptive model with doing a large-scale event. Stephen Reginald is founder of Gear Junkie, came from a traditional newspaper column and now probably one of the most widely read blogs in outdoor gear today. Hae-Soon Han is a well-known and has spoken here often on trend forecasting. Was at Promo Steel with Color at one point in time, has been doing future trends for 15 years in different iterations?
30 some years.
30 some, well,
Yeah.
the current company.
No, that's about 20 some years, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then on
I'm
the
the
end,
old-timer.
Cam is from Alchemy Equipment,
Thank you.
a brand that's exhibiting in Venture Out space, and a little bit about Cam's background, and I'll let these guys give a little bio when they talk about themselves. Cam also comes from a traditional background, was at MacPac for many years, and then if you look at Alchemy Equipment today, it's quite a bit of the leading edge on design and style in the outdoor space. So with that tip, I'll let you talk coming this way, but a little bit about your brand and what your background is.
Yeah, my name is Campbell Jenner. I'm from New Zealand, and I've got about 25 years working in the outdoor industry as designer, creative director for outdoor brands from both Australia and New Zealand. I started off with a company called Kathmandu, which is a vertically integrated retailer of sort of outdoor product. It's got quite big, but when I started there was 10 people in the business. And most recently I was co-owner of another pretty iconic New Zealand core outdoor brand called MacPac. And in that business, wore the hat of creative director and opened 50 stores for them. So we changed that store from a wholesale business to a retail business. Left there about 2.5 years ago and started Alchemy Equipment, which is the new little venture. And what I hope is a new opportunity in the market. Enough?
Good.
Perfect.
Hae-Soon?
Okay. I see out there like lots of familiar faces, so you don't need to go through all my old bio. We're not going to go do that. We're going to do it from like backwards. I'm spending a lot of time doing consulting for very large Fortune 500 companies now because everybody's become one. So they all grow up. I'm considering that Scott's put together an incubator, so as you grow up, somebody will suck you on, and then you'll belong to one of those companies. Okay, so outdoor has been kind of affectionately a side arena where I've done a lot of work. So at one point I even went into Adidas so that I can actually affect some change there. Coloring is absolutely something I fundamentally think is my legacy work, but I spend a lot of time doing merchandising and creative direction. So recently, I don't care. I mean, half those brands here, I probably have something to do with, right? From Patagonia and on. So I'm looking at Lee there's North Face and everybody. So we work with a lot of companies. Fundamentally, our work is actually to facilitate change. The structure of it, what it looks like. We usually get called in by senior management saying, here's a little crick, we troubleshoot. But creativity has to be a very organized play. And so we actually have to go in there and work with people so we can actually create beautiful products. Particularly right now, because we have so much product And we are now living in a new age where we will no longer have garbage, because garbage will be probably the most valuable thing we have. So we're now in a time where we're shifting paradigm. So I think it's critical for companies like us to go in and do consulting. But I came here to join Scott last minute. I changed my plans to do this because I wanted to talk about really the small crisis we have in the way you guys deal with retail and distribution. Yeah?
Perfect.
So, Steven Reginald, I'm with GearJunkie.com. I'm the founder of Gear Junkie. I'm a newspaper journalist at my roots and have been doing the Gear Junkie newspaper column for over a decade. Launched a website called GearJunkie.com in 2006 and have built a small team. We have 8 or 10 people that show here. We give out awards. So I know Scott's saying 5 to 10 years in the future. Gear Junkie is, I get up in the morning and look at the news and build a daily blog. So it's crazy for me to try to think of that, but I'll do my best. They don't let you talk.
There you go.
You can use my mic if you need to.
Just yell.
Here, I can lean over.
Hi. We just met. So
Improvisation.
Are you getting this? All right, great. Okay. My name's Darren Bush. I found out about this half an hour ago. I'm a very high-functioning introvert, so this is way outside of my comfort zone.
But this isn't.
Really outside my comfort zone. She smells good. I run a specialty retailer called Rutabaga Paddle Sports in Madison, Wisconsin. By training, I'm an epidemiologist because that's what I started to do, and ended up doing this. I don't know how, but this is where I'm supposed to be. I love the outdoors. I live in Madison. I love Madison. I love my life. I love my kids. I love snowshoeing. I love everything. So that's why I'm here, because I love stuff. And yeah, that's it.
Cool. That works out? Yeah. Hi, my name is Janine Pesh. I am a trend forecasting consultant first, and I own a small creative agency called Range, based out of LA. I've been giving trend presentations at Outdoor Retailer for over a decade, and part of my business is helping my clients figure out what's coming next, how to adapt, how to tell better stories through product and at retail. And the other part of my business is publishing a biannual newsprint, which you can pick up at Venture Out, and I have some copies here at the end of the stage. And it focuses on what's happening in the market right now and what we see coming in the pipeline. So I kind of work in 2 different capacities: real-time editorial, and then future forecasting and what's coming. So that's that.
All right. So first question I want to talk a little bit of back history. And Hasoon, I'm going to touch on you. In 2012, you did an interview with the Show Daily, and you were talking about future trend, and you were talking about how you saw outdoor influencing fashion, but how outdoor was yet to look to fashion, but you saw that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
So that was 4 years ago, going back in time, and now we've got the Venture Out space where we see a lot more fashion coming into outdoor, kind of like Cam's business. Last year, Steven, you guys at Gear Junkie coined the term lumbersexual, where the outdoor brands started to really adopt that fashion trend. Can you talk a little bit about what you saw then and how you've seen it evolve over the last 4 years to where now outdoor and fashion collide or don't collide?
They do collide. I think the element that made the whole thing collide was denim, jeans. Yeah? So with these 2 pieces, the jeans and the t-shirt, we have found the vehicle in which to merge. I looked at your line, yeah, and we have all this technological built into jeans, pants, and still, even though I don't understand why hiking pants in the trend of booty is everything don't make guys' butts look better, that's my little complaint, because if you climb, you have a nice derriere, but that aside, it's all those 2 pieces that have kind of merged this thing. But I think the most exciting thing is the fact that you have huge potential here, like you're doing, to define the new wardrobe. This is the new modern wardrobe, right? This is what we are basically living in. So if you can kind of see the large picture and the scope of how you're influencing the world, the sustainability stuff, we got Carla sitting here, we got lots of people who want to do this, that's all good and fine. I think that's the DNA, the philosophy, but I think it's huge. Now, the only really preservation thing I want to say is that I would love to see more of that in outdoor, which is kind of what you guys are doing here, this cross market, because I would hate for the fashion to then come in and take the whole thing over. Because I hate to say this and not in any negative way, they're going to do this better than you. If you don't get there first, they will devour you, right? So it's not a surprise that everybody has now these tons of markets that are going to do crossover sport. So I don't want it to go in the via of the technical sport market, because Fabletics is nice, but it ain't technical. So, I don't want them to devour that, but I think it's huge. I think it's entirely up to the way you define this category.
Do you think there's a demographic, age demographic or consumer demographic where it differs, or do you see that being a need throughout the whole spectrum?
I think first of all, I think if you're in your 50s, I'm in my 50s. We're called a generation who don't know boundaries, right? We should stop going to rock concerts with our kids. We should also stop sitting and having questionable consumption with guys in their 70s, and I will miss Skip very much. But those guys who created this industry, right? So he's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. But the truth is, the market that's really ripe for this are the guys who suffer this in a physical, political way, and these are people who are in their 30s or even in their late 20s having families and kids. And they actually get this. They want to live this way. So people always on this floor might ask me, is it a price issue? Is it a distribution issue? But in essence, if you actually tap what that philosophy is and then go after that demographic and where they buy and the way they eat, I think that's where you have a huge golden opportunity. The only downside to this, which is what you and I spoke about a little bit earlier, is that you have to educate them and get them early. And this is where I think you guys kind of lack. You have to get the younger people to understand what this means, because the style is cool, the lifestyle is great. If you can attract them, that's your threshold there. That family, I want to have a kid or two, and I want to have chickens in the backyard. That whole demographic.
Darren, I'd be curious, now you have a working mic, I'll put you on the spot.
I kind of like the other way better.
As a traditional retailer, canoes being one of the most iconic legacy type products, and you guys are known for canoes and kayaks and water sports. How in a college town like Madison, as a retailer, do you guys go out and say, okay, we have to honor this traditional space where we've been, and then also be able to attract these younger consumers to come in? Have how you sell and how you approach people as a retailer changed over time to bring in this new consumer or the products you offer?
Well, how we do everything changes over time. That's the fun part, right? Is to change. The big thing about young people is they really do want to be outside, and we provide a really easy way for them to do that. It's not really that hard. They want experiences, not stuff. That's why Gear to Go in Brooklyn is doing so well. My daughter lives in East Harlem and teaches in the Bronx, and she grew up as a tree hugging dirt worshiper. So what does she do? She's got to get out. And she has a lot of peers that she takes out, and they get out and they go to the Poconos or whatever, and this is awesome. So all it is a matter of exposure. You just have to show them what it is and let them experience it, and don't make fun of them for taking Instagram shots of everything, because that's how they share their experiences, and I think it's awesome.
Stephen, with your blog, do you guys track what gets read, or how any of the demographics of the viewer that's coming in? Have you seen certain things like traditional gear reviews? Let me back up a little bit. Conventional media has changed a lot as we go back in the last 5 years. As you were not talking beforehand, the PR magic 5 years ago was you get in one of the 3 buyers guides and you were golden. Now with blogs and the democratization of information around brands, have you seen the consumers that are coming to your blog attract to certain things, certain ways that things are written, or certain information around gathering experiences versus just learning about a tech spec?
To me, the buyer's guide information and the reviews are sort of the backbone of what Gear Junkie is, but what is going to hook somebody on our blog is an experiential article, a trip report, beautiful photography that shows the experience of being outdoors. And we've shifted our content very much. We used to be the core gear review blog, and now that's 25% of what we do, and it is our backbone. It's our SEO juice, and we have thousands of pages of gear reviews, but it's never the content that spikes. and so it resonates with an audience, but it has our expansion of focus into more lifestyle, more the experience of being outdoors has grown our audience tenfold, so it's been very successful for us.
Had to be interesting. You and I had an email exchange before the show about that term lumbersexual and how that, from showing up in the Gear Junkie blog to then being used on CNN, NBC, Target's marketing release, and that happened in the period of weeks, relatively.
Yeah, that was, for better or worse, the most viral thing we've ever put out. It had hundreds of millions of impressions, was on Oprah and et al. It was just ridiculous. Nominated for Oxford Dictionary Year, the word of the year. Big asterisk here, we did not make up that word. We heard it at OR here about a year and a half ago. People were kicking around lumbersexual, guys with beards and flannel, and we built a story and it just lit on fire. And it was just kind of a crazy bridge to this mass culture interest in this little percolating trend in the outdoors world.
So I'm going to bounce down to Cam. This shift, this percolating world from traditional and then into the lifestyle, you went from, for those of you guys that don't know Macpac, Macpac was a truly iconic New Zealand core technical brand. And the product you're making now, while still having exceptional technical merit, looks more like it would belong in a Barney's than any, where Macpac was very traditional, like an REI for US buyers. How was that shift for you? What propagated that shift internally to go from traditional design into much more fashion influence?
I just sensed there was already a want within outdoor brands to do lifestyle clothing, but I think there's always a built-in challenge of plasticity of brand. It's very hard for a brand which has got its roots in the mountains to really sit comfortably in the high street. It always sort of struggles to be to sit comfortably. They're sort of bound by certain things within the business, whether it's polyesters or nylons, and I felt there's much more scope to look at more traditional textiles, some tailoring textiles, and add performance to those. And the idea of our brand, Alchemy, is performance-driven style. So I guess the shift came because I realised that I'd worked with technical products for nearly 25 years, and as a consequence of working with them, I never really went into the mountains anymore. I spent all my time traveling the cities. So I guess it started off in the most simple way of building product that I wanted, and I couldn't find a factory that would build one at a time, so I had to make a business.
Made it for yourself. So you were solving your own problem.
Essentially, and I'm not alone. There's many people of my generation who kind of were in between. There wasn't really something that was I felt that was for us. And as I said before, I think that a lot of the more traditional outdoor businesses did it in their own way, their own style, their own handwriting, which wasn't what I was seeking. And I thought there was another opportunity there.
I just want to have one little input to what he was saying about the lumberjack and what he's saying about the products. Listen, we all know that most of the stuff that you're selling here and pitching here is never going to see a mountain, right? So I'm from New York City. We need more technical assets in our everyday today than you do in suburbs, because we actually deal with the climate. We walk on the street, we go through that stuff. So we are actually, talk to a high school kid in New York City. They'll tell you technical needs and functional needs really fast. But what I wanted to say to what he said about the sexy lumberjack and all of that other stuff is that when I look around the outdoor floor always, I'm always looking for the one brand that's different. I'm sure you're looking for the same thing. Something that's going to pop out that doesn't look like everybody else. And I always accuse of the outdoor industry of having too many of the kumbaya moments where you all like each other too much. So the way things repeat and the redundancy is really difficult to get around. So if I was a buyer and I was doing a floor, even if it's at Barney's, I would be really struggling with, after a while, they kind of look alike, so who do I like most? Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very, very important distinction. For me, I'm always looking to see who's going to be brave enough to do something that distinguishes them. And this culture, BS branding, BS label business, BS blah, 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 is very nice to look at in a brochure, but in the end, when I see outdoor brand ads and I can't remember which outdoor brand it was for, it's a bit of a problem. So I just want you to know, as a person who observes, studies, and then tries to forecast in certain arenas up to even 20 years in advance, because a lot of creative companies have to plan that far in ahead, and now that all the financial people own us, you have to report that far in advance. Even if you're going to plan that far in advance, really get that straight. Like, mean it and do something different so that they have something to put a hook on. Because that's what they've done with his blog. So whether you like it or not, that's part of your legacy now.
You
Because
put a
you're
hook
the
on
one
it.
who's been given credit for that particular thing, right? It's
So-
important.
Yep.
One of the things that I think we've seen change is we've seen this, as Jesus was saying, there's the multinationals, there's a lot of homogeny in certain places, but there has been this inspired movement, I would say, of a lot of people building for themselves in a different way. I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about how have you seen that happen at retail? So we've had, I would say, if you go back 3 or 4 years, there was a lot of retail where you went and you looked at other retailers and retailers would mimic what was working within retailers. From a trend perspective, what have you seen shift in retail where retailers have gone out and tried new brands or have tried new merchandising ideas to help differentiate themselves on the retail side, but still being tied outdoor?
Well, I think it comes back to bravery, as you were saying, and fear of failure. No one wants to be the first retailer to take a chance on a new brand or a brand that maybe is emerging or maybe not as core, and have it fall flat. But if those willing to take those chances are the ones actually spearheading the movement, because they're the ones introducing lifestyle apparel and storytelling into their core offerings and assortments. Core is core, and that's our target audience, as it should be, because that's what this industry is built on. Authenticity and the people who have been part of it since the beginning. But this new emerging demographic, the millennials, the Gen Zs, they're not interested in performance as much as they are just actually end use and the story that comes along with it. And sure, that story needs to be authentic, but it also has to be dimensional and captivating. So I find retailers that are really looking outside of the bubble and harnessing social media, engagement, activation, really captivating visual merchandising within their brick and mortar platforms, and also across channels. Retail should be omni at this point. What you're saying on your digital and social platforms should be represented as well in your physical location. They're having a lot of success. I was just reading a really interesting article in the Business of Fashion last week about your store is going to become your media platform. So not necessarily in the sense of you're not going to sell things anymore, because that would be a little reductive, but in the sense that stores aren't just going to be about selling, they're going to be about engagement and activation. So the more you can pull in-store events, pop-ups, athlete and ambassador evenings, meetups, tying in again social media to your store is going to give you a really concrete, I think a really firm platform to stand on as retail evolves. And maybe you have some
I'd love to get, because
yeah.
three of us up here get to be the ideas that pitch. You're the one that actually, as a brick and mortar
Yeah.
retailer, has to actuate those. So I'd love to get your insight.
Yeah, I think if you're just doing nothing but selling stuff, you're a vending machine. You might as well just close your doors. The idea is to get everybody to activate and to engage and to love your store and to love to be there, not just because you got the cool stuff. And I think one of the best parts of my job is when I put a post up on Facebook that has the new baby that was born to 2 of our staff a couple weeks ago, and she's in her office feeding the baby, and all I have is a picture of the door with a sign that says, breastfeeding, don't come in. And I get 2,000 likes, right? If I put a coupon up that says, bring this in for 10% off, I get 3, right? So you're telling your story, and people will buy stuff if you tell an authentic story. If you're trying just to push product, number one, it's not effective. Number two, it's boring. It's not very much fun.
Yeah, and I think people don't want to be sold to, and they know when they're being sold to and targeted. And they have so many options now. I mean, there's so many brands out there that are doing great jobs through their social media engagement in their community. And, if you are coming at them with a hard sell, they're going to sense it and they're going to back away. You need to romance them into the purchase. and it needs to be subtle. It definitely, can't be too subtle. You need them to buy things to keep you in business, but there has to be something they're getting back from you. And I think that's why something like Opt Outside that REI launched was so successful, because they were saying, hey, we want you to buy our products, and we know you respect what we do as we respect what you do, but we're not going to pressure you to come to our store and spend money and get discounts on this day where everyone else is doing it and kind of marching along like mindless zombies just to shop. So I think the consumer is getting a lot more intelligent in terms of their options and their choices and what's out there, and they can spread their buying power out across multiple categories, especially mobile. I mean, I think mobile is absolutely the future. It's changed everything that we've done, from the way we communicate with clients to the way they shop within the last 2 years, even more than the last 5. I mean, everyone's on their phone, and if you can't figure out how to integrate the phone into your store and into your storyline, you're going to come up against some trouble. I don't think you're going to fail, but I think you're just going to have a little less success speaking to that younger demographic, because that's the future.
So if those are your current needs, so we're talking mobile activation, tele experiences, engage that customer, how is that going to shift? Is that going to stay the same pace over the next 5 years, or do you think, and we'll start with Hae-Sun, shaking your head no, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, if you're talking to a retailer today saying, here's what you need to do, these are the things you should be thinking about for a decade from now, if you were to succession planning, you're going to leave this store to your kids, here's what they need to be working on, where would you start?
Well, I think there is right now an over-calculation about what media will do for you. I think social media right now has become the place where you buy your customers, literally. It might not be in a discount on your product necessarily, but you know what I mean about the whole, you have to pay for all of this stuff to get out there. I also want to just remind everybody that the first iPhone was not that long ago. It's not even been a decade. So I think if you really think about how fast it's moving, you kind of want to have a good idea what your target point is. Scott made a good point about where would the target customer be when you look at this new venture out effort. And I think you kind of have to look at that first. So one of the things that we're looking at, especially with collegiate students, where I'm spending a little time on right now, is that you kind of have to see in what way they want to adopt the media, in what way they want to live in it, and in what way they want to use it. And so right now we're in this frenzy where we want to tell stories and all that stuff. It's all good. I worry about how long it'll last. Because if you really track back and say, when did it really start and get this crazy? It wasn't that long ago. If you look at 5 years ago and think about how many coupons and emails you would get on your anything, any gadget you're using, it wasn't that much. It's only in the last 3 years we're seeing it barrage, like an avalanche has happened. If you think about how long ago it was on Google and Facebook where you did not have Facebook, where you did not have advertising, it wasn't that long ago. So we know this is a very, very fast-moving target. So what we've had to do, and you the same, they're coming to trending companies and saying, what color can I put on that jacket so I can sell more if it shows up on a phone? Yeah? So now you have to kind of target that deeply into who you're going after and who uses the phone. So who uses the phone? Janine's right. Everybody wants to do on this phone thing because that's where the youth market is doing everything. But in essence, then where do you get this? Where do you get this person to buy it if they're doing this mountain outdoorsy experiential kind of value system? So we are first kind of actually having to do something that's painful for a lot of brands, which is to go back and saying, who are you? What are you? And why do you exist? And we're kind of brutal about it. We're kind of saying, well, I can show you 10 other brands that do same exactly what you do. Now tell me why you're different again. Because when you have a retail store or any other place where you have to be the facilitator to get to your customer, you have to kind of know it. So we first do the branding exercise. Then after that, we say, okay, what is your budget? Because depending on your budget threshold, there is no grassroots anymore. The thing that looks like grassroots is probably your most expensive investment. And every senior management doesn't want any marketing heads anymore. So how much money do you have? And then we come back and we say, can we get a reality check on what your expectation is for distribution? Because in outdoor, we actually have to ask, does it exist? Because it can't be 5 buddies in Colorado anymore like we used to have the industry. That was great then. Anyway, it's not like that anymore. So now you have to kind of see where it goes. So we go through this 3-step vetting process to see if we can get a realistic idea of it. And I'm happy to report that for a lot of companies, they're fine with a good, healthy, small company that they can control, as opposed to everybody looking to say, let's make it X million dollars so we can sell it to, I'm sure VF is here someplace. So you actually, you don't want to necessarily do that. So there are 2-3 different schools of thought here. We do have companies who actually say, can you flip this around, blow it up, and then so we can sell it? Everybody knows what that scenario is like. There are lots of buyers in the world, so they're interested. But in reality, I'm happy to report, and I like the fact that people here in this arena are authentic enough to say, we like it this way. So we put them through those 3 things. And then we expect isolation and differentiation. So luxury fashion brands for us, we actually do a lot of effort to say stop the media, stop the commercials, stop buying pages in Vogue, because that's not effective. It makes you less cool.
Yeah, can I just add one thing? That I love all these strategies and tactics, and they're very, very useful. People fall in love the same way now as they did 100,000 years ago, right? So my job is to facilitate people falling in love with the outdoors. And it's the same mechanism, really. They have an experience that is just like mind-blowing. And for some people, it's climbing Rainier. For some people, it's paddling on the pond behind their house and going, my life just changed, right? So I'm looking for ways to help my customers fall in love with the outdoors, because that's what happened to me, and I want them to have that.
And what's interesting is you're comfortable saying, if you fell in love with the outdoors, climbing Rainier, you're not holding on to that. You're saying, look, the way it worked for me isn't necessarily the same way for you. So I want to facilitate what's going to work for you, and I'll go to where you need to be, not you have to come to me.
And this is where specialty retail often steps on its own toes, because it's all about them and what they do and how they do it. And the imagery they use is right. It's like, here's the guy standing on top of a mountain. It's like, that is not what I'm interested in. Here's me with 5 friends sitting around a campfire ring in a state park. That I can see myself doing. And that's where people fall in love with the outdoors. It's not climbing Rainier. It's cool, but it's
accessibility. That's the biggest word for me in the last 2 seasons I've been talking to clients about is accessibility. Because there's so much crossover between urban and outdoor and rural. I mean, 80% of the population is going to be living in an urban environment by 2020, as opposed to a suburban or rural environment. So to bring up Hasten's fact that she mentioned earlier is about functionality within the city. City people, urban people like myself, I live in LA, I'm from New York. I mean, we appreciate technical apparel and functionality just as much as any outdoor enthusiast, but it just needs to look right, and it needs to feel right, and it needs to blend in with our environment and not stand out and, like a sore thumb. And I think accessibility and excitement is something that helps people feel more comfortable. And there's a very big divide, obviously, between those 2 schools of thought. Like outdoor should stay outdoor and should stay core, and lifestyle should stay lifestyle. But inevitably, they will overlap and merge. And if we don't acknowledge that and build product for that emerging market, we're going to miss out on a huge opportunity. Yeah. A great example is Mountain Hardwear doing the collaboration with Cole Haan, and everyone lost their minds in the outdoor industry that they did it. And, I support that decision from a design standpoint, and I think aesthetically it was really appealing, and functionally it was really appealing to me. But what was really interesting is that they're 2 experts in their own fields coming together. And I think that's what's really important. I think if you take if you cut the fat away and all the fluff and what goes into building these collaborations and brand collaborations and whatnot, when you have 2 experts that come together in their field to create a product that works for a specific case use, and it's done well, we should celebrate that. We shouldn't shame it, and we shouldn't, put it in the corner and act like it's a bad thing. I mean, it's progression, it's moving forward, and this industry is based in progression to a certain extent. I mean, at the end of the day, we want it to protect it, but we have to progress and move forward in order to evolve. And I think evolution and accessibility are just 2 things to kind of keep in mind as buzzwords as we go forward.
So I got one more comment, and then we're going to open up for questions. Cam, having been on the dirtbag side of outdoor and have moved to fashion, you made that transition both personally and in your design and in your aesthetic. So it wasn't like you you went to that urban side physically, and New Zealand itself is quite unique. You have incredible urban city centers, very proximal to outdoor. Have you found in an American market, talking to people, has it been difficult to explain why urban is relevant, why the fashion aesthetic that you've brought in is relevant, or have you had people question your technical authenticity because it has style? Has that been a challenge, or have people been pretty open and accepting to that?
Oh, a mixed reaction. I mean, I don't think I'll sell to everybody, nor is that my want. We don't play by a lot of the same standards that traditional outdoor brands have, with big swing cards, technical call-outs, and we're a little bit more quiet in our information giving, which probably works against us in this environment. But we don't just sell through the outdoor channel. We sell through other channels as well, where that's much more appreciated, to have a more of a quiet aesthetic at point of sale. All the technical merits there, but it's communicated more in a tailoring way. We're opening it up, and the detail is to be found on the inside. It's more a product you fall in love with experience and use, rather than shouty, look at me on the shop floor. So, your traditional retailer who wants just to open up the door, waiting for people to come in, buy stuff, and close the door at the end of the day. I mean, they're going to die anyway, that type of retailer. So we're not really trying to give them that same formula. Rather build a more sustainable, enduring relationship with our product and brand, that people will discover the benefits and merits through use. And a lot of information and decision making isn't really, it's with digital natives going to be the main people we're talking about in 2020. They're going to peer-to-peer sell anyway. So it's a lot of our loves come from users and bloggers and people that have used the product, rather than what happens on outdoor retailer booth. I think the buyers here have a very difficult job, because there's not that seems to be a decreasing amount of offers here that won't withstand a label swap. There is a lot of homogeny, as you said before, and I think that's part of the evolution of outdoor. There's been so many mergers and acquisitions where founders have sold out and private equities come in, and they just want to try and move to the big middle. And if everyone does the same thing, then everything inevitably, and they'll read your blog on color forecasting, it's inevitable everything's going to look the same. So the enlightened retailers, I think, are probably trying to look for what the next trend will be, or what the next opportunity may be. And obviously, you identified that quite early, Scott, by curating a group of companies that are giving them something to look at and consider, and put them together. So I think it is. The original question was, do I feel people don't understand how the technicality of product, or how does it fit into their business? Yeah, I guess that's true for a lot of retailers, and that's fine. I don't need to be in every retailer for us. It's if it makes sense to them, it makes sense to them. If it doesn't, there's plenty of choices. I mean, that's perhaps what there's a bit too much of at the moment. There's too many choices.
Too many choices. So I guess I lied. One last question, Stephen. As a blogger, I'm sure you get hit up with a lot of people coming and telling you what's great and what's next and why you should write a story about them. Have you seen anyone come to you recently? You don't have to necessarily name the brand if you don't want to, but have you had anyone come to you that has shown you something you're like, you've had that moment where like you saw something that was truly unique, truly standing out, different, that you were like, they're on it? And how do you see that? How does that show up?
For sure, we see that every couple of months. Vibram this year had a wrapping shoe that you wrap onto your foot in Velcro in place. Totally crazy. It was one of our top articles of the year. But I wanted, backing up, the whole point of us at this show is identifying our best in show products. We give out these awards, and what that is to us is innovation and something different. There's a sea of sameness here, and every year there's a new jacket that's a different color, the hood adjustment is different, but what we do, and we have 6 to 8 people on the floor right now trying to find the 10 to 30 brands that have done something new. So that's really our focus, because after covering this show and this industry for years, it became really kind of boring to me to be, again, that buyer's guide sort of voice, and I think also to our readers. So we've really evolved into covering what is new and innovative and trending and different.
So a little bit of a challenging question. then if you're a retailer and they come to your blog and they are trying to find something new, and every retailer listens to you and buys that same Vibram shoe, then you end up with the Hey Soon situation, which is the sea of sameness, because now everyone's bought the same thing. So how do retailers find that information and trust that this is the cool new thing, but if we all buy the cool new thing, then it's not special?
Well,
Like,
but-
where's that risk come from?
But they don't. They don't do that because, as both of you said, it's about courage. We were one of the first 25 Fingers stores in the country, and we got on the wave early and we got off the wave. We were one of the first icebreaker dealers in the country. So I like taking risk, not bleeding edge risk, but if you're not taking risk, again, it's not very much fun. It's like, yeah, here's your $250, high DWR, triple layer Gore-Tex, blah, blah, blah. So what? We have some because we have to. But yeah, if you're not looking for the next cool, don't worry about being imitated by everybody else because they won't do it.
Cool. We've got just a few minutes. Anyone have questions from the audience that we could grab? There are a lot of people there. Someone's got to have a question.
Tracy?
Nadine.
Tracy, did you have? So, Darren, I think we've got behind Jennifer.
Oh, behind.
You can just.
There you go.
There you go.
Knew that come in handy.
Everyone's point about accessibility and the importance of the urban market for outdoor. There are festivals like Outdoor Fest in New York and Wonderlust, which has gone global. There are aggregate sites like ClassPass and Fit Reserve that are getting people really active and out there and living this lifestyle. How can retailers take advantage of those things?
So the question, if you guys couldn't hear, was that there are a series of festivals that are taking place in urban centers, the abbreviated version. So there's these festivals that are taking place in urban centers where people are going outside and they're having these experiences. How can retailers be able to capitalize on that? And I'll chime in with my own voice. I think that retailers that are actually creating their own events or partnering with these events are really well rewarded, because to Darren's point, that retailer can go out and they can sell that experience, and they don't necessarily have to become the event producer. The idea of becoming an event producer is a whole different game. I mean, obviously you guys pull it off with Canoecopia, and it's on a phenomenal scale, but a lot of retailers have found that they can partner and have a significant space within this event and be associated to it, and then they're associated to the experience itself. But I do know that a lot of the event brands, and I've worked with some of them, they have a hard time. They go talk to retailers and they say, we don't do events, we sell product. And then what they've effectively said is, we don't deliver experiences, we just deliver a transaction, and then they wonder why someone else goes somewhere else to have that transaction. And I would say that if you are a retailer, that finding those local events, even if something as simple as, if you have a local trail running club, let them meet at your store, which is really basic. But there are some things where you can be much more progressive. Help set up camp at music festivals where people are camping, and just provide staff to be the ones that help people set up their tents walking through, because then they associate, oh, that person who is really knowledgeable on site selection for a tent at my local camping festival is the person I'm now going to go trust because they helped me out. They didn't try and sell a transaction, they helped me have a better experience.
I also think that the pop-up, which is a hugely successful concept in the fashion industry and technology and lifestyle market, is something the outdoor industry has really yet to really dive into. They're temporary spaces and store-in-store events, or events popping up or stores popping up at events rather, or festivals that can really give you an opportunity to set up shop somewhere, showcase your assortment, whether it's you're selling your own line or you're selling third-party retail products, and then getting that engagement like on the ground. I mean, everyone is scared of the pop-up in outdoor because it's a new thing, but in the fashion industry, it's very normal and very traditional to kind of collaborate in that capacity. So I think the word collaboration also comes into play, and again, honing in on what would be a good fit for your retail, for your assortment, what you've got going on with another event. Wanderlust is a great example, and there's tons of music festivals out there that if you can figure out how to offer a very curated selection of goods within that environment, you're going to get a lot of eyes on it, and maybe even introduce your store and those products to a new customer or consumer.
A classic example of this is talking to the guys at Rumpel that when they built their booth for OR, which they built over the last couple of weeks, they built their 10 by 10 booth specifically so that they could take it to festivals and pop it up and sell out of the exact same booth they use here. So they have brand continuity from the trade show to the festival, and it's something that they could pop up and sell out of, and it's not just a 10 by 10. It's a unique thing that looks like their brand wherever they go. So they're bringing that mindset all the way forward. They could partner with a retailer and have a series of those at an event, and you make that connection just like that.
Scott, I think even at a more simplistic level, if you're not highly engaged with this festival, if it's not your event, or even if it is your event, you don't have to use it as a sales conversion tool. I mean, don't try and sell. Just
Be there.
Just sort of, you're talking to people that want to be part of a tribe, and if this is your tribe, just let them know I was here too, I had a good time. And you've just built a deeper connection that you didn't try and sell them anything, but it's probably more meaningful.
Did you get your question?
This is a question to retail. What, as a collective, is anyone doing to set up transportation systems from the place where you get the product to where you're going to use the product? I think Europe has it hands down. You don't need a car. I have young sons. They have trouble accessing the outdoors. And it's a question for city mayors as well. How do you get people from Seattle to Mount Rainier?
You know, I'll chime in on that. I think there's the aspect of being able to get people to the farther out outdoors, but this opportunity with the pop-up shop. You know, in San Francisco, the guys at A-Light did a pop-up shop at the beach this summer, and they did a pop-up shop with beach chairs and totes and bags and coolers and all the stuff you'd want, all the accoutrement that goes with being at the beach. But they didn't try and run their store in January when no one's going to Ocean Beach. They ran it in July when it was a few blocks away. And so that pop-up shop opportunity allowed a retailer to be where the consumer was going to have a need then for that period of time, where someone was going to be able to get the transportation. You know, if you're a traditional outdoor shop, if you're a canoe shop, and you can have an experience place that's here where people are going to go at that point in time and then it can go away, you're not building traditional brick and mortar, you know, access to backpacks, access to gear that can be within the normal public transportation of an urban center. 80% of the population lives in Salt Lake. 81% of the population of Salt Lake is deemed urban. Not Salt Lake, Utah. Utah as a state currently is deemed 81% urban, mostly because of the Provo, Salt Lake community here. But if you look at the demographics, it's not as rural of a state as you think. So if you're trying to fish where there's catch fish where they are, you can stay in the city centers. You don't need to take people all the way to Bryce and Zion. You can make sure that you have access to someone that's going to go hike City Creek and touch them here. I think those are smaller proximal investments that are easier for retailers to make than trying to figure out how you're going to get someone hundreds of miles with your product. Go where the numbers are, go where the people are, and touch them there first.
Yeah. A-Light actually also partnered with Zipcar and did a project with Zipcar to get people, you know, giving them the wheels to get out of the city. But we actually have an article in the new issue of Range in the newspaper about urban micro-adventures and using public transportation to get outside in places like New York and Los Angeles. So you know, there is that opportunity as well to tap into the public system and again work with the, you know, you mentioned the mayor and working with your community board to figure out how to get you know, give people the opportunity to have more access to get outside just using the bus and the train. And that's something we kind of often take for granted because we think about packing our Subarus and our trucks with gear and heading out, but it's really something that can be a little bit more simple than that at its essence.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, is there one last question? Right behind you, Jen.
Does Made in USA mean anything to the new urban outdoor customer?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say, I'll chime in, you guys can comment. I think that there's a value in Made in USA, but I think that the Made in USA still has to have a story. So you can't just make something in USA and have it have high value because it has an American flag on it. With that target, with the demographic we're talking about. You know, you can still make cheap crap in LA. And it's got the flag on that says it was made here. So that's not necessarily going to win you over. When it has a brand story, when it has a creation and a design and aesthetic and evaluation behind it, and you add that Made in USA side of things, that adds value. But I still think that you could have highly well-made, beautiful product with unique stories that are made overseas, and it will trump American-made product if the American-made product doesn't have the same level of design and backstory to it. It's not, I think people thought that, I can just do made in the USA and it'll be the silver bullet, and it's not. I don't know if that's...
I mean, Filson's a great example.
You're saying Filson's a great example, right? Like
In USA and a good story.
Yeah, in the USA and a great story. Have you seen the response to Made in USA on
I was going to add not only made in USA, but made in Portland, Oregon, USA, made in Minneapolis, Minnesota, US. Like, I think that even more hyper localizing things, made in USA to me could be New Jersey or whatever, Kansas City or New York. So I've seen that a lot in my research and writing interviewing. People are grabbing their geography and stamping that on their product.
Did you, has anyone seen the United by Blue story on the bison coat that they made? It's worth checking out, and it's cool because it's not just, hey, we made a jacket in the US. It's like walking through the fields where the bison came from and where this fiber came from and why they were innovating on new fiber. It was all of those aspects plus the fact that it was made local, and so people actually felt that very specific sense of place, like it was here in this city, my city, woohoo! Kind of mindset that really helps.
I also love the Duckworth story because it's completely vertical from sheep to shelf. I know that term's not theirs technically, but
sheep to shelf.
They have they're growing wool in America. They're sourcing merino and beautiful Rambouillet sheep in Montana. They're processing and spinning the wool. Then the wool is actually getting made into apparel and garments and finished product in America. So the entire cycle is a closed loop cycle that's a domestic thing, and I think it's just their story is just starting to get told now, and that's wool's a dirty industry technically, and even though it's a renewable industry and it's environmentally and sustainably a little bit more acceptable, those are the stories that I'm like, yes, like Farm to Feet, another great example of a brand making from concept to production here in the States, and that's a great way to look at it, I guess.
Kim's like made in New Zealand.
Yeah. Sorry.
But Janet, I think the most important thing about the Made in America thing is that I think we underestimate, and the American ego is not that strong enough to understand the value of American style. I mean, there's a clumsy uniqueness that's absolutely an American thing. So I think the way we morph stuff is also an American thing. I mean, the way what we do with food and our farm to table, all this other stuff. You have so much inertia from other consumer product areas to support the idea that Made in America is something special, but to his point, it has to be something special. But there is this made, and also when you go out of the borders, then it's unique because it has Made in America, so you can't probably find it over there. So this exclusivity is a very, very important element, even though we talk in terms of collaboration and accessibility. So accessibility to McDonald's is not as interesting, but accessibility to Made in America boats might be. You see, so you kind of have to play what that is. And I'm always trying to remind consumer products people, you're in the business of seduction. Nobody needs anything you sell. What they need to do is be seduced into it and want it. So if this is an industry of want, you have to kind of know and have a good ego. I spend a lot of time explaining to the world about American style. It's a legitimate, important thing. So I love that we try that. It doesn't have to be right, but you do have to do it. It's a very important movement, just for the ego of American design.
Thank you.
We've wrapped our time, but the last note I want to leave on, taking away a couple of words, is it sounds like the future is going to involve seduction, love, and experiences.
And romance.
And romance. So take that with you as you go on and plan for your future business. Thank you very much for being at the camp and joining us this morning.